thank you very much, Frank, Sigurd, and also Sarah for the introduction. Of course, Frank already said yesterday, and Sigurd also, that this kind of discussion would have been much more nice and insightful if we're not mediated by video camera, right? But this is what we have. And I hope that in the future we can go on with face-to-face and convivial relation to discuss about these arguments, because I think are very important, and I feel that we are all companion on trying to find a good way to transform the society, the Westernized society in which we live in. It's a great pleasure for me to come after Koei, because well, basically probably we can have another seminar perhaps in the closer future on degrowth communism, because we are very much I'm personally very much in line with what he was saying. As you will see, I'm much more, I will say, Gramscian than a Marxian, but there's a lot of things, or the most of things that I share, Koei said. So I feel he's a completely companion, and I would like to complement some of his arguments with my talk. Indeed, I have just published a blog entry that is called "Degrowth Ecosocialism: a false paradox," in which indeed I underline, as Koei was saying, the potential alliance between this kind of approach. Okay. Having said that, well, I didn't participate to the session of this morning because after the Chakra Battery presentation yesterday, I was thinking to reframe my presentation, because I really appreciate more also most of what he was saying, but I was not convincing of some of his argumentation. Then I will try indeed to first of all to differentiate degrowth from his idea of scaling back. I will try to argument that degrowth is not just a matter of scaling back. And also I will try to argument that the problem are not the people, the common people in Delhi needing for air conditioning, but the problem are coming from different people for the transformation. So I will share a little bit my screen. It seems that I cannot share the full screen, but we can see something together while I'm presenting. Okay, first of all, as I was saying, I'm very influenced by Gramscian analysis, and what I want to highlight here that is very important analytically for Gramsci, the common sense at plural. So the hegemonic discourses is an articulation of common senses that become indeed hegemonic, and a different articulation then can be a counter-hegemony. So what we are trying to do as a degrowth or eco-socialist is to counter narrative articulating different common senses. So I want to start from this, and I want to be very clear about the problem, no? The main common sense problem, I would say. So on one side, we have the growth common sense, okay? And I will say to my grandmother, I said indeed, very simply, that this society in which we live is based on the idea that to stay well, you need more. Or if to stay better, you need more and more, okay? So this really simple common sense is embodied by different kind of people, of course. It's embodied by Jeff Bezos, no? That now just demitted as CEO because he wants to dedicate to his foundation to go to space, right? And then to the Thatcher, of course, or Sultan of Brunei that has thousands of Ferrari. Well, I have nothing against Ferrari. I'm an Italian, as you know. But the logic of Ferrari probably is problematic, and the logic of the Sultan of Brunei to have thousands of race cars is a problem. But of course, it's not a matter, about the elite, and this is very central, no? This is why I have also this photo of exotic tourism together with the photo of Bezos, of Sultan, and Thatcher, no? The idea of to stay well, in order to stay better, is something that many people embody. Okay, many common people embody, and this is something that we have to work and to transform. Indeed, basically, I will also try to explain that the bedrock, no, of the growth economy and capital relation is the liberal idea that any individual is legitimate to extract, to use, to control, to consume, to waste, and dispose of all the resources that he or she needs, no, to pursue her or his personal wants. This is the very bedrock, the liberal idea on which then capital forces and relation are built. So as we are legitimated to mobilize all these resources, then of course capital relation is a good relation to promise to many people the legitimacy, to provide to many people the legitimacy to do that. No, in this sense, Bezos is really, and not the the common people in Delhi buying the air conditioning, as Chakrabarti was saying, are not those people the problem. The problem is that the liberal idea legitimizes Jeff Bezos to go to the space and to spend tons of resources to go to the space. It's not the problem of transformation. It's not that we have to face the eating of for common people, but to struggle against this idea. And then against these common senses, I will say there is the common senses of the degrowth, and this idea that to live simply so others, human and non-human, may simply live. So on one side, you have the growth, imaginary, common sense. You need more and more to live better. On the other side, and we contrast this common sense with the idea of live simply so others may simply live. This is very central in the articulation of the transformation, okay? Of course, this is embodied by many people. I would say the ex-president of Uruguay, Mujica, is a great example. He had the possibility to live in excess as many presidents do, but he decided to live simply, okay? Winona LaDuke is another example. She was running twice, I think, as a vice president in USA for the Green Party, but she continues to live in her community and struggling against the pipeline in the indigenous community. The Pope is also another example, no? The Pope Francisco also decided to live in the avoid to live in the papal apartment, and he decided to go in the guest house of the Vatican, for example. But there are, it's not just, of leading figures that are doing this kind of choices. There are many people around that also embody this idea of live simply. This cargo bike is an example of how to have a convivial moving inside the city against, the Brunei Sultan of having cars and thousands of cars in order to feel better. Okay, this is very important to contrast. On one side, the growth common sense on the other side, the counter-hegemonic common sense. So in this sense, I want also to contrast a little bit this idea of, not to contrast, but to complement this simplistic idea of scaling back. The path is not to scaling back, okay? Normally, we have growth, more of the same. We have this strange model, and sometimes recession or less of the same is associated to degrowth, but indeed it's not, right? So the point is not to scaling back. What we want is not an angry, hungry elephant, a meager elephant. No, we don't want a linear, simply elephant. We don't want to move and scale back on the same scale of process of metabolism. We want different metabolism. We want a different kind of configuration of socio-economical and cultural relation. Okay, indeed. Well, this is a premise to understand also why we need to be more clear on the nuance of the path that we want to go through. No, I will move to the idea that degrowth want to reconfigure, no, the societal metabolism, but want to guarantee life's condition to deserve the joy to be lived. So we have to sustain, to support lives that deserve the joy to be lived. No, we don't want to preserve the life for itself, to life for the life. No, I think this is also will be more a kind of survivalist approach that is at least not good for us. So the problem is how we transform the elephant. This is nothing about against the elephant. We don't have anything against the elephant. We just use it as a metaphor of a big metabolism, right? So in this is what we develop in our last book, The Case for Degrowth, in which we indeed discuss the sacrifice of growth. Okay, so the fact that growth imply a lot of sacrifices to many people, also to the people living in Delhi, forced to buy air conditioning because Jeff Bezos want to go to the space. Okay, so the problem of sacrifice of growth need to be highlighted. Then we, as also Clay was hinting a little bit, we root the growth on the commons and community economy. But in this line, I think it's also important to underline the fact that Chakrabarti was saying we cannot leave the people, the common people alone. This is why we think that we have, indeed, I thank you very much, Sarah, that you quote my paper on the state and the growth, because we need to rethink the articulation of state relation and public agency to understand how public authorities can help on mobilize resources, support people for the transformation. This is coming to the path-breaking reform that we propose, no, somehow. Because the path-breaking reform, the locus of this reform are the political agency, state articulation at different scale, and so on and so forth. And then the politics of degrowth is more in line with the strategy for the transformation, no? Somehow is in line with this idea that we propose a transformative strategy of building new common senses. Again, remember my initial idea of contrasting common sense of growth with common sense of degrowth. So we need to embody a different kind of anthropological and cultural subject and practice and defense the commons, articulate new political movement and political agency. So the sacrifice of growth, of course, are not just ecological, and this is again, it's in line with the most of also discourse that Koei was doing. Is of course it's also economic. We have capital relation, So there is a capital domination in the appropriation of value, no? So we have seen that in the last history of humanity, workers are more and more losing their power in terms of not of producing the wealth, because they are still producing the wealth, um, but appropriating this commonwealth, no? That Quay was speaking in Marxian terms. Then, of course, there is a sacrifice of growth in terms of cultural issue. Growth and modernity has been as a long colonial and brutal colonial legacy, in which, you know, the growth imaginary need also to completely dominate different culture and different ontology. No, this is something that we are sacrificing as human progress. We are sacrificing the diversity of cultural and ontologies that were living on the world. They are still living in the world. No? And the sacrifice of growth is also related to gender. This is a feminist, the idea of reproduction, the caring, and the commons in a more closer kind of relation with our friends and neighbors, and which women have been subjugated to and forced to be the main responsible for reproduction and care. So this is the sacrifice of growth, no, somehow. Then rooting the growth on the commons, this is just an example of a wealth of different kind of activity, of course, social and solidarity economy, permaculture, agriculture, commons currency, local currency, but also digital peer-to-peer production. So the technology and low tech needs also to be developed in the line of and edges of peer-to-peer production. Then path-breaking reform. On this, I agree with Quay that the Green New Deal, in the way in which normally and mainstreamed proposed, is problematic. This is why we promote a sort of Green New Deal without growth. And I think we need to implement many investments, but without having always as a priority growth, but abandoning this idea of prioritizing growth. Then another breaking reform that we propose in the book, The Case for the Good, is reducing working hours, support community economy, and then the commons. No, provisioning of universal basic and care income. This is something that I want to just underline also, because I think it's in line with the COE underlining of Marx's idea of giving to the people according to their needs and taking from the people according to their abilities. Okay. And then we have fiscal and monetary reforms. We are just saying that we should move from taxation to the work, to taxation to the use of resources. We need a wealth taxation, a maximum income, and so on and so forth. Then just my last 2-3 minutes. I hope I'm not going too much over my time. I want to highlight the fact that we are supporting care income, an argumentation that somehow complements the idea of universal basic income. Universal basic income nowadays is promoted and articulated, I think, on a liberal and abstract idea of the right to be live, not to live somehow. So we are all equal. We will have all equally an equal distribution of money to access to this society. I would complement this on with more materialist or Marxian, if you wish, kind of proposal. And this is why I'm supporting in the book, we support the universal care income. So an income for everybody, but differentiated. So I would say that universal basic income is based on equality principle, and universal care income is based on the equity principle. So to everybody according to its contribution and to its necessity. What does it mean? That care and reproduction, as I was saying at the beginning, in the sacrifice of growth, has been, first of all, a responsibility, and still is too much a responsibility we think about care not only in terms of reproduction of household, but reproduction of ecosystem, for example, on the shoulder of the women, on the shoulder of the minorities all around, rural areas and so on, people living there, taking care of ecosystems and so on, without being remunerated or recognized. And in this sense, we want to have a universal care income that will redistribute more to women and to those that care about ecosystems, and proportionally less to men and to the others that dedicate very low amount of time to the care and the reproduction. So this is, again, I just want to focus this because I think also it's important to differentiate the argument and the degrowth vision and degrowth articulation with two specific kind of programs that now are very, very, core in the political debate, that is Green New Deal. So we need a Green New Deal, but without growth. A universal income, yes, we need a universal income to help common people that are forced to use air conditioning. We need to support them with the universal care income, but we need, above all, to support those people, those women, and those minority people that take care more of the reproduction of society in order to restabilize an unequal system. And this is why it's important to differentiate our articulation of universal basics, not on liberal ideas, because this is the bedrock of growth economy and capital forces, but on more Marxian kind of analysis and Gramscian analysis, as I tried to show in my presentation. And I will finish here. I hope that I did not abuse too much of my time, and we have for discussion.